folks, welcome to another board game breakfast. I'm Tom Vasel, and at first I have to say that I watched a live game of Nothing Personal last night. The people did not believe it was me, but I'm saying that it was on video now so they know. Also, we have some new promos, so check those out in the Dice Dice Baby section. And we got live Q&A. Will not be today, but will be tomorrow so that I can get Z in. So that will be around 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. So come and ask me and Z questions. And the reason I moved it, part of the reason I moved it tomorrow is because I got some extra reviews coming out today. Okay, so there's all that coming up. We're pushing forward. This is like the height of the board game season. Lots of things to talk about. So let's get right to the news. Okay, in the news, first of all, we've had some more information about the new Monopoly movie. In fact, here's the pitch for it. The story centers on a boy from Baltic Avenue who uses both chance and community in a quest to make his fortune, taking him on a fun, adventure-filled journey. It's about making your own luck, what makes you truly rich, and of course, avoiding jail time. Sounds pretty bad, right? I don't know. But it is by the same screenwriter who did The Truman Show, which is one of my favorite movies. So there's possibilities here. One of the Spiel des Jahres nominees, which are going to be announced probably maybe by the time this video comes out, so keep an eye out for those. But the game is one of the 3 nominees for the Spiel des Jahres, and that's being released in North America by IDW Games. So you'll be able to get that around September. In the Austrian Games of the Years have been announced. The Vienna Games Academy released the winners. Their Game of Games, I don't know if that's like the best game of all of them, but that was by Rainer Knizia. You know, nowadays people talk about Rainer Knizia not having it anymore, but he still is producing games that a lot of people are enjoying and playing. They also had family games for families that included Looney Quest, Hamster Back, and Cacao. Their games for experts, Orleans and Progress, Evolution of Tomorrow. They gave a special 2-player award to Patchwork and the Griffin Scroll Award to XCOM. Oh, well, so interesting there. Cryptozoic has the license for Attack on Titan. Now, this is an anime series and books that people have really been enthralled with. I actually found them kind of enjoyable, if a bit gruesome. Cryptozoic, but they have some world-class designers here, Antoine Bauza and Ludovic Mablanc. Both of those have done some amazing games in the past, so very much looking forward to this game, scheduled for 2016. USAopoly has a pile of games coming out. Most you probably aren't interested in. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, Trivial Pursuit, Back to the Future, Yahtzee, Pass the Blame. You know, you have to give good excuses to pass the blame. But the one I found interesting was Risk for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, don't run away from Risk. This has the board looks like it's New York City. You have 5 different factions, but it's a 2-sided game. On the other side, says the box, is the Guardians of the Galaxy standalone card and dice game. So there's 2 chances for there to be a good game. Risk is not inherently bad, so it'll be interesting to see some work done on that. I look forward to that. Asmodee managed to get Spotted. That's a big license that they picked up from Blue Orange Games. Spotted has sold over 1 million copies. Very popular game, and Asmodee continues to expand.
Okay, we've been talking about the GNS theory as developed by Mr. Ron Edwards, which represents the 3 tranches of gaming: gamism, narrativism, and simulationism. Today we're doing a deep dive on narrativism. Narrativism represents how well a game tells a story. Narrativism is more important in a team game or a co-op than it is in a PvP. The thrill of victory of the story we're telling is more engaging when we're sharing it together rather than it's just you and me beating against each other. Now, narrativism frequently requires characters. It's much more interesting if you're a specific character than if it's just you're the blue one and she's the white one and he's the green one. I mean, for example, when I play Seven Wonders, I never feel like I'm involved in some kind of story about how human beings created these amazing statues. I really just feel like I'm playing a lightweight game designed to scale comfortably from 3 to 7 players with simultaneous turn-taking. Now, when we think of narrativism, we might restrict ourselves to storytelling games, such as Betrayal at House on the Hill or Tales of the Arabian Nights, but it's not limited to that. A key component of narrativism is that the game has a clear beginning, middle, and end, with rising tension and an appropriate resolution. Something that bothers me about a game like, say, your Settlers of Catan, is somebody gets to 10 points and boop, the game ends immediately. There's no climax there. There's no finale. It's more of a grand finale.
Wordplay.
This is what I appreciate about the evolution of Marvel Legendary to Legendary Encounters. Legendary Encounters divides the game up into 3 different acts with the beginning, middle, and end. Whereas Legendary Marvel just basically throws a bunch of stuff in a deck and then warps it onto the page in front of you. Along those lines, one of the keys to a successful narrative component of a game is different scenarios. For example, in X-Wing, it's more interesting when we can rescue Admiral Akbar than it is that we're just shooting at each other every time. Okay, so we've talked about simulationism, we've talked about narrativism. Next time, in our 4th and final chapter, we'll bring it all together. Hope you come along with us on the journey.
Hey everybody, Tom Vasel here.
Jason Levine.
Today we have a question specifically for Jason from Chris. And he says, Jason, you win a lot. And Chris says he wins a lot. And he says in his group, whenever he wins, there's a lot of grumbling like, oh, he won again. And there's never any congratulations on his victory. Do you ever feel winner's remorse? Like, for example, many times when we're playing with Jason, we will say things like, well, we're playing to see who's second. Forget Jason, we're all trying to win. And sometimes when you win, people are like, oh, whatever, Jason won again. What do you think about that?
No, I mean, I don't feel insulted. I mean, there's obviously times where, and Tom's right, they do joke about that. They're like, well, we're all playing for second. Whoever gets second really gets first because Jason's going to win anyway. But in reality, I'm like, I'm not going to not play well to purposely lose a game, but I don't think that anyone despises me if I win a game. So
okay, but I guess more, do you wish people would not get upset when you won?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've never seen people get upset, so I don't know if people really get upset. I mean, maybe you get upset when I win. I don't know, because I don't usually, I don't see people getting so upset like, oh, he wins, I don't want to play with him anymore, which is how I would think someone would be upset. So I don't know. I mean, I don't usually see people get upset, so I'm not sure.
All right. Well, I guess I found that for me, I don't win as often as Jason does. I have people attack me or something. They'll be like, well, this is Tom's game, and he understands it better than anyone else, so I'll hit him and stuff. But I've never really minded that either. I mean, it is kind of annoying, I think, sometimes if you win a hard-fought victory and your opponents are like, you only won because of luck. That's kind of annoying, especially when you didn't win because of luck. When you won because you outplayed your opponent, and they refuse to say that. They'll be like, well, whatever, if this hadn't happened, you wouldn't have won or whatever. And I feel like that can disparage your winning. But I think it goes to show us that we should make sure to congratulate the winners. And as a winner, if you win a lot, you should be gracious in your victory. But don't be... I guess you gotta be careful. I mean, sometimes the losers can be such sore losers that they can make someone who wins goes, yeah, I won. But you should get some joy in a victory. That's the whole point of playing a game. I mean, no, the whole point is to have fun. But I mean, the point of playing a game is to see who wins.
Yeah, I mean, usually I try my best. So if I win, I win. But the way I always looked at it is, if you win, you win. If you lose, you lose, as long as you're having fun. And, you always say, hey, good game, hey, I always say to someone, good game, I like what you did here, and that's why you won, and good move, and good this, and good that, because that's what it's about. It's about having fun, and, of course there's winners and losers, unless we're playing a co-op, but, I don't worry too much about it.
Well, that's that. Send us your questions at dicetower@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel.
Jason Levine.
Hi, Suzanne here with this week's featured board game app. Bluffing is one of the most difficult board game mechanisms to implement in the digital world. After all, so much of a bluff is in reading your opponent's expression and body language. But Coup is one of the most loved bluffing games out there, so it's perhaps unsurprising that a developer wanted to bring it to the digital realm. How'd they do? Let's take a quick look. Coup is a game of last player standing in which you have 2 cards that represent the people you have influence over. Each role has a special ability, and you take turns collecting money or taking special actions. Once you have 7 coins, you can coup an opponent, forcing them to reveal a card. When both of a player's cards are revealed, they're out. The real appeal of the game is in the interplay between players and bluffing actions of roles that you may not have influence over. And so much of bluffing and deduction is in reading expressions and tone of voice. And it's the nature of app gaming that basically all of that is lost in translation. Let me say this, the app is gorgeous. The developers created all new art and have put together a slick-looking package. There's a tutorial, a fancy interface, on-screen hints, a lot of nice features. To try and help with the table banter, they've added a series of sayings you can select from to taunt or entice other players. But that leads to another issue with the app, the IAP involved, which upset a fair number of users upon release because some of the phrases had to be purchased. The good news is that the developers have shown through their recent updates that they are dedicated to improving the app experience, including a practice mode and changing up the way the content was being made available. But as far as I can tell, this just isn't a game meant to be played with faceless opponents. Coup is a great game, and these developers are talented. I'd love to see them put their skills towards bringing another board game to the digital realm. But based on my experiences with the Coup app, which includes seeing a lot of my friends trying it and then quickly abandoning it, I can't recommend you give it a try.
I'm really excited about some of the stuff we have for you this week. First of all, I'm going to actually be reviewing the Magic the Gathering board game twice. I'm going to be reviewing it once for everybody and once if you are a fan of Heroescape. In fact, Melody and I will be doing a live play of Magic the Gathering the board game on Wednesday, so come back and watch us do that then. I'll also be looking at Dark Moon, and I'm really excited to be taking a look at Blood Rage from Cool Mini or Not. And there's quite a few other reviewers, and Z will be doing some reviews, Sam and myself. There's a lot of reviews. I think there's like 15 other reviews coming out. And then our podcasts and such. There's a lot of fresh new games that are coming out at Gen Con or be right before Gen Con, and we're trying to get the scoop on as many of those as we possibly can. So keep an eye on all that. You can find it at dicetower.com.
Chaz Marler from Pair of Dice Paradise here, welcoming you to a new batch of segments in my Meeples for Sheepish Peoples series, discussing the social activity of board games in the lives of people who aren't necessarily socially outgoing. Now, viewers of the previous episodes on this topic may recall that the catalyst that triggered this whole thing was when I let the opportunity to attend Gen Con last year slip through my fingers. I let myself use the size of the crowds and the cacophony of the spectacle as an excuse not to participate. But then, even before last year's Gen Con ended, I discovered that I was disappointed in myself for letting it pass me by. So, I told myself that if the chance to attend it arose again this year, nerves or not, I was going to seize the opportunity. And seize it I have! With Gen Con less than a month away at the time of this recording, I am planning on being there. But it hasn't been an easy road. And that's part of what the following episodes are going to address. But before we get to those episodes, I want to restate that, not every introverted or socially anxious board gamer wants to attend conventions or even force themselves out of their shell. And that's absolutely fine. But for those of us who do want to try and broaden our social horizons, struggles with fear, anxiety, and stress can prevent us from ever getting started. And those struggles are what I'm going to talk about. Now, I'm not claiming to be a mental health professional, just going to speak from my own experiences. Speaking of experience, I figured that a good way to prepare for the massive social juggernaut that is Gen Con would be to attend a smaller convention prior to it. Grease the wheels of social interaction, as it were. It just so happens that I was fortunate enough to be able to attend Dice Tower Con last week, so I kind of treated it as a dress rehearsal. Now, I had a lot of things in my favor going into Dice Tower Con. It's roughly 1/60th the size of Gen Con, and some of the convention goers already knew who I was, which admittedly gave my confidence, and ego, a bit of a boost. So, with the deck stacked so much in my favor, I totally aced Dice Tower Con, right? No. Oh. I still managed to screw up a few things, and next time I'll continue by sharing some of the failures and triumphs that I experienced while battling self-doubt and social anxiety at Dice Tower Con.
First of all, folks, today I want to show you some. These are from our Kickstarter, but I now have extras available, and you can find them by going to Dicetower.com and clicking on the donate thing on the menu. These are for Sheriff of Nottingham, and each player starts with one of these at the beginning of the game. You have one for each color. And you can play these once per game, and what you do is when you have a bag, and you're either the sheriff or the player whose bag is being checked, you can play one of these cards to double the rewards or penalties from the bag. So you do it before they open it. So you can play it and say, are you sure you want to open that, Sheriff? Because if you open it, you're going to have to pay me that much more. Now, you might be bluffing, and the sheriff could even double that. Play 2 cards on it and say, all right, well, double down on this. So they kind of make the game really fun, I think. These are cards that I designed. And also, if you go to Cool Stuff, you can... we have the Tom Rick Arcadia Quest figure. You can get it from there, and the money will go to support the Dice Tower. Now, for both these cards and the Tom Rick Cool Stuff Arcadia Quest promo, Cool Mini or Not promo, they are pricier, okay? I wouldn't buy them, I think, just if I wanted the things. The money does go to support the Dice Tower, which is why they are pricier, and that's what's going on there. You don't need them for the game. The games are complete without them, but if you'd like to have them, they're there. But hey, speaking of Dice Towers, this here is a Dice Tower from Dogmite Games. This is a very chunky, really nice Dice Tower. And there's actually a piece here that's missing. Chains connect these. I got this Dice Tower from them at Origins. I took the chains off to keep them safe and, well, lost them on the way home. But it has felt on the inside, and you can see the dice come out. It really is a nice looking Dice Tower. It looks like a great thing. And so you can find more about them at their website, Dogmite Games. So they have all different types, and their website is actually just dogmite.com. But they also now have a Dice Tower one. This is phenomenal, folks. Look at that. It looks just like our logo. And here you can see the chains. And man, I'm just so happy with this one. This is the first Dice Tower that I've gotten. And you can pick what color flag you want and what color felt you want. You can get different options. These are pricier Dice Towers, but they are really nice looking ones. And here, I'll show you. There's the dice coming out. Wow, this is cool. So if you want to get a Dice Tower, and this is a really good, mantle type piece, but it's actually useful when you're playing games. Again, that's dogmite.com. We're in the top 10, yeah! 10 great expansions that you cannot live without. Number 10 is, well, probably any of the expansions for Dice Masters. I like that a lot, but I think I'll give props to the DC Dice Masters. When I first heard about Dice Masters with Marvel, I was like, ooh, this is good. And they said, hey, Tom, we're going to get the DC license. And I was like, what? Superman versus Spider-Man? Batman versus Daredevil? Flash versus Quicksilver? What is this? It's amazing, and it's cool. That's just a cool thing. I'm always wanting to mix those two cinematic universes, and I was very pleased to do that. And, I mean, the Dungeons & Dragons expansions, no small thing. Now, each of these are their own standalone games, too, so you might say, foul, Vasel. I don't care. They're all expansions to me, and so I'm very excited with them. Then we have a very small expansion, C3K. And what's interesting is, this is an expansion for 2 games, for Cyclades and for Kemet. That's why I have them together on my shelf, because I will often have to take both of them to the same place at the same time, because I have this expansion. What it lets you do is it lets you use the monsters from Cyclades in Kemet and the monsters from Kemet in Cyclades. And it makes both games better. It really does. Kemet now has 5 extra monsters. Cyclades has a whole pile of extra cards and cool things that you can do. Really enjoy this expansion. Small, kind of weird because you need 2 games, but if you have both those games and you like them, which you should, it's phenomenal. Then we have Kingsburg to Forge the Realm. If you own Kingsburg, you buy this expansion. No doubt, No question, you should. It takes Kingsburg from being a very fun game to being a must-own game. It takes Kingsburg from having some pretty set strategies to having multiple various strategies. It comes with 5 modules, some which I certainly like better than others, but some which everyone thinks are incredibly essential. For me, the new player boards are so important, I threw the old ones away. Kingsburg is a phenomenal game. It has lasted for a long time with me and will continue to do so. This expansion has made it pretty much a forever kept game in my collection. Then back to Cyclades again, and that's the Titans expansion. The Titans adding giant things, adding a new map, adding an extra player, adding things that you can fight over. I liked Cyclades before, but I always said Kemet was the better game. Now I'm torn because I think both of them are phenomenally good games. Both of them have been elevated, and it's because of Titans. Cyclades had added so many cool things to the game. It turned it a little bit more war-ish, but still kept that really cool Euro game auction bidding that I liked from the original one. Cyclades, Titans, and C3K. Well, there you have just amazement. And then finally, Innovation, Echoes of the Past. Innovation was a game that I enjoyed very much when I played it, but I was like, okay, it's good, you know, it is what it is, I enjoy it. But when Echoes of the Past came out, it became one of my favorite games. Echoes of the Past added more technologies, more things that you could do. Switching in and out, you never saw all the technologies. It added new mechanisms, foreshadowing, seeing things beforehand, new ways to spend money. Just so many cool things that it added to the game. And I think added diversity so that no game of Innovation is ever the same twice. An amazingly cool expansion. I love it. But there are 5 yet to come. The 5 greatest expansions of all time? We'll find out about them next week.
Welcome to Building Blocks with the Dukes of Dice.
Let's say you want to teach a non-gamer Power Grid, a solid, medium-weight game that masterfully employs an auction bidding mechanic in which players bid on power plants which are used to power cities, to earn money, which players then turn around and use to bid on new, more efficient power plants to make even more money.
The auction mechanic has players take turns bidding on an item, usually with some money or at least some stand-in for money. Each bid has to be for an increased amount, and players will eventually pass, leaving the last highest bidder the winner of the auction, gaining that particular item.
Skillful bidding requires a player to evaluate what something is worth. Some items might be more valuable because they're inherently more powerful, but some items might be more situationally valuable depending on the state of the game. For example, in Power Grid, I might be willing to pay more for the only available nuclear plant to add to my existing nuclear plants. Of course, keeping this from happening might be incentive for other players to bid more to win the plant, or at least drive up the price for me.
In order to ease a player into auction bidding, we recommend the Game of 49. Players start with $49 apiece and bid to buy spaces numbered 1 to 49 on a 7x7 game board. The object is to be the first player to claim 4 spaces in a row. In turn, randomly drawn number cards are auctioned one at a time, with the highest bidder placing a chip on the matching board space. Wild/payoff cards give players a choice of where to place their chip and also award cash to all players for their chips on the board, $7 a chip with a maximum payout of 49.
Oh. The Game of 49 is a streamlined auction game where players assign value to spaces on the board based on how likely those are to help get 4 in a row, keep other players from doing the same, or simply just to get spaces to earn more money.
Building on the auctioning and money management and generation from the Game of 49, a new gamer could jump into Power Grid and feel comfortable with those mechanics. Yeah, there's a step up in complexity in the introduction of the resource market, the map, but they'll have a lot of the basics they need to wrap their head around Power Grid.
When I first began reviewing board games and I started to meet publishers and designers, it was like a marvelous thing. You met big name designers and publishers and everybody was nice, and everybody said everybody was nice, and everybody worked together. In fact, people would say, should I protect someone from stealing my work? And everybody would say, don't worry about it, it doesn't happen. And indeed, that's kind of true for the most part. But in every business, there's going to be some bad eggs. There's going to be con artists and people who are just jerky business people to work with, and people who put money before relationships, who put money before morality or even legality. And so those people are to be watched for. And this kind of comes on to the publisher versus designer. You're a designer, and designers are out there like, ooh, I don't know what to do. There's so many publishers. Will this publisher steal my idea? Well, frankly, it has happened, but that's a very rare thing. And publishers will usually treat designers well, but they don't always treat designers well. Now, on the flip side of the coin, designers don't often come through for publishers. Publishers say, we need this done. The designer says, yes, I'll do this. Or they have a very clear agreement and the designer wants more or something that wasn't in the agreement. The fact is, what do you do then when the other person is wronging you, at least in your opinion? Well, as we can see over the past decade or so, some people have decided to take this to the internet. Now, usually it's the designers who do so. The designer goes out there and says, this publisher has wronged me. And the internet, in its infinite wisdom, always backs the designer because the internet still looks at publishers as, ho, 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 top hats and, the monocles and money falling out of them. Ah. And if you met publishers, you would know that that's not even remotely true. And they look at designers as the guy who's like the starving artist or so, which also is not always true. And so designers and publishers, I think it's very incorrect to give one our sympathy just because we like the designs that they have done. It's very possible for a designer to be a fantastic designer and be a horrible human being. It's very possible for a publisher to publish your favorite games and be a despicable person, or the opposite, right? Someone might make terrible games, but they're the nicest person in the world. So I would caution very strongly when you see these public arguments to really stay out of them, because unless you have personal knowledge of both sides, you're not going to know which one's better. And to say, what? This publisher is treating this designer poorly? I will boycott this publisher. This publisher called this designer out. I'm never going to play that designer's games again. Again, you don't know both sides of the story, and usually one side won't publish your side of the story. It's probably unprofessional to do so. But what do you do when these guys come? And I have known designers in this very situation where they say, such and such publisher is really in a bad way, and so what do we do in this situation? You say, well, just suck it up, go on and you learn a lesson. But you say, well, hey, I want to warn other designers. Well, fortunately, I found a third way here. There is a German organization, the Game Designers Organization. It's the Spiel Alteran Zunft, SAZ, okay? And designers can join this. You pay a fee. It's kind of like a union of sorts. And they work together to make sure that the designers' names are in the box. And you can join this place and you can anonymously, or at least in the group itself, you can talk about publishers who have wronged you or publishers who have done things right and what have you, and it will stay there and it doesn't become a big messy thing on the internet. Well, that's an interesting thing. You can also do it person to person, right? If you're a designer and maybe a publisher has treated you poorly and you meet someone else and they're going, I'm thinking about going to that publisher, you can say, well, you know what? Before you do, I feel burdened to tell you this. I don't think making a splash on the internet is the best use of it. Although I can see why the temptation is strong, and while sometimes you can sit there and go, I gotta, it's just not fair. But the court of public opinion doesn't really mean anything other than you can get people riled up, and sometimes unfairly. Recently, there was one designer who made statements against the publisher and included a couple other people who weren't even involved in it, and then people were yelling at those people, and it was kind of a mess, and the designer had to go back and apologize to at least one of the parties because they had nothing to do with it. So you always have to be very cautious. And in the past once, I remember one of these big arguments between two people where I took one side because I knew the one person and I thought that person was not a very nice person. Didn't matter whether they were nice or not, they were in the right. Now, this also brings us to the back that get your contract looked at and make sure it's right. And make sure you trust the person, but you can trust somebody who does you wrong too. I don't say all this to scare you away, okay? We're talking about an infinitesimally small number of publishers and designers. Most people in this business are amazing to work with. I have had such a privilege working with people, but you're invariably going to run into disagreements with people that you work with. You're invariably going to come and say, well, I thought you meant this. So it's good to clarify those things right away, and then it's best to try to solve these things between people. And if that doesn't work, I would go to mediation or something else. Again, taking it on the internet should be the last thing you ever do. So you might sit there and go, oh man, I see all these fires around at different times. I know it's hard, and I know it's tempting, but just read them with the open mind and don't try to jump on the aggrieved party's side because you're not quite sure what's happened there. It's interesting, but remember that. Remember that SAZ organization. If you can't find them, I'll try to put a link here in the show notes so that you can maybe join them if you're a designer, or at least just go look at their website and see what they're all about. But there's an option. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. What do you think people should do? What if I'm your publisher and you design a game and I said, oh, well, this contract here said this, but it really means this, and I worded it just so that legally I'm right, and I've messed you over. What should you do in that situation? So, anyhow, let's continue on.
Some of our guests here at Snakes and Lattes know exactly what they want to play when they arrive. They are here looking for the hot new Euro game they've been dying to try for a little while. Or they want to sample all of this year's Spiel des Jahres nominees. Or maybe they're here for somebody's birthday and they just want to get their silly on with some party games. Whatever it is, that's great. We love it when you know what you want. But not everybody does. That's where breadstick games come in. Breadstick games, just like the food stuff you get at a regular restaurant, are something to tide you over and whet your appetite while you're waiting for the main course, or while you're waiting for your guru to arrive. Spot It is a fast-paced pattern-matching game for up to 8 players. If it's not available, try Shrimp Cocktail, Glow Splits, Set, or Jungle Speed instead. Blockus or Blockus Duo is an easy-to-learn abstract strategy game that's as challenging to play as your opponent is clever. If it's not available, try Pentago, Kulami, Abalone, or Kamisado. Hey, That's My Fish. This is a game of tactical penguin deployment. If it isn't free, try Six, Nowhere to Go, Quirkle, or Quirkle Cubes instead. Animal Upon Animal is a European take on stacking games like Jenga. If it's unavailable, try Plitch Platch Penguin, also known as Penguin Pile-Up, Jenga, Talk Talk Woodman, also known as Click Clack Lumberjack, or Stack Up. Quarto is Connect 4's sexy European cousin. It's a little more attractive, a lot more sophisticated. If it isn't available, try Corridor, Pylos, Batik, or Eclipse. Frankly, try any of the Gigamic game line. Word Around. What Spot It does for pictures, Word Around does for words. If it isn't free, try Letter Roll, Boggle, Bananagrams, or Anomia. Timeline. Get rid of your events cards by putting them in the correct order in the timeline. Comes in several different flavors, discoveries, inventions, music and cinema, and more. If none of the timeline games are free, try Cardline Animals or Cardline Globetrotter. So, for your board game cafe, you're going to want to have your own set of breadstick games.
Welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. My name is Cody. So last week I did kind of a fun little short about me playing the game on the back of a breakfast cereal box. Well, it was fun. We had some laughs. But actually, I really wanted to comment on a serious problem that we have today in the board and card game industry. And that is this. There is a lack, there is a dearth of tasty board and card games. How often have you played a game and then you went to celebrate your victory by biting into one of those board game components only to go, ugh, I shouldn't have done that. You know what I'm talking about. Have you ever tried taking a bite from one of those plastic minis from Zombicide? Ugh, not cool, cool mini or not. Have you ever stuck a TIE fighter down your throat and then tried fighting, keeping it down? I mean, come on, Fantasy Flight games. And don't even get me started, tasty minstrel games. The Village? More like the Taste Badage. Yeah, I said it. Thank goodness we've got Tom Vasel working diligently trying to put milk on the components. One of these days he's going to find the perfect formula. Is it too much to ask to make meeples out of marshmallows and our cubes out of sugar? Come on, board game industry, get it together!
Well, okay then. Guys, I'm so glad you watched Board Game Breakfast. Don't forget all the new promos, and don't forget the thank you to all the Kickstarters. If you are a Kickstarter backer, all the stuff has been shipped out. So if you're in the United States, you will have it probably by the end of the week. If you're anywhere overseas, you will get your stuff. Well, that all depends on the post office. Thank you guys for supporting the Dice Tower. I really appreciate it. See you live for Q&A tomorrow. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast.
Thanks for watching Board Game Breakfast. Tune in each week for your daily dose of gaming goodness with Tom Vasel and all the gang. Until next time, I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast, a Dice Tower production, sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., an amazing place to buy board games. Cool Stuff, in stock, at coolstuffinc.com.